Now it's time. Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
We have 8 present with Mr. Wagner excused.
Very good. Would ask for a motion to approve the agenda before you. Motion by Ramden, second by Kroll. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Would ask for a motion to approve August 3rd, 2020 meeting minutes. Motion by Augustine, second by Poppy. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Public comment? Do we have any? Anyone who wishes to speak?
I believe everyone that is there would have an item that is on the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Outstanding. Administrators report.
You have in front of you the personnel report, at least previously. As you can tell, we have a new economic support specialist in human services. We did, I know that says resignation, but we do have the termination of Mr. Reckel as parks caretaker. And only because we wanted to make sure that you have enough time to process it, Mr. Cornelius will be retiring sometime in 2021. Also, one other item that is on there, we do have a recent resignation in the emergency management department for the administrative assistant. If there's any other questions, I'll take them.
Any other questions for Mr. Felt at this time? Very well. Approve filling of county positions. A, CCS Director, Human Services.
Certainly. Sarah McKnight was the incumbent in that position. She had resigned as of the end of July. We are looking to have Kelly Davis take over that position, but before that were to happen, we need an approval from the committee to be allowed to fill the position.
Is there a motion? Motion.
I will make that motion to fill the position.
Motion by Haskey,
Second.
second by Mastelier. Any discussion? You have the motion before you. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. B, Parks Caretaker, reckon promotion.
Yes, we have the previous parks caretaker was terminated on August 28th. We would like to fill that position as the weather starts to get a little bit colder. We will need extra people for Winter Park and as well as prepping the trail and the variety. So this is not a new position, it's filling of a current position.
Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Motion by Yankee,
Second.
second by Augustine. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Chief Deputy, Sheriff's Department.
Yes, as I had previously said, Mr. Cornelius, after decades of service to the county, will be retiring. But I always like to get since we know that it's coming, I'm asking for approval now so that way we can start that process ahead of time and get someone selected and on board so that way they can have a little bit of transition before Mr. Cornelius leaves us.
Do I have a motion? Supervisor Kroll, second. Supervisor Mastelier. Any discussion? Other than decades and decades of service, did you say?
There's probably at least 30.
30, really? All in Kewaunee County? 25, wow. All right.
I'm rounding up.
The rest of his career, we had the pleasure of Dave serving on our Oklahoma Police Department for many years, so.
Oh, wow. Very good. How many total? Wow. Well, we won't ask your age. All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Radio operator jailer eligibility list.
As we continue to look at county positions, we currently, from our current eligibility list, we have females that could possibly take positions if a female position were to become available, but we do not have any males. And so therefore, in conversations with the sheriff, we would like to start the process of creating an eligibility list for the position. There are no open positions at this present time, but it allows us to move forward when a position does open up.
Do we have a motion? Supervisor Kroll, second. Supervisor Haskey, discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Administrative assistant.
As I had just said previously, the administrative assistant, her last day, I believe, is the 21st of September. Is that correct, Tracy? The 21st of September, but to therefore, as we know, a recruiting process is not something that takes days. It usually takes weeks. So therefore, since I was already amending the agenda, I wanted to put this forward so that way, if it was approved, we could start the recruitment process as soon as possible.
Do I have a motion? Supervisor Augustine, second.
Second.
Supervisor Romden. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to 2021 budget staffing request. So we have a series of pay scale modifications. The first one being step 2 to 3, sheriff's assistant.
I can give a little bit of background. When we talk about pay scale modification, when we're saying from step 2 to step 3, what that means in reality is an additional step. The current incumbent or staff member in this position is at step 1. In 2021, they would go to step 2. The request is therefore to go to step 3. That would then be similar for letter C, and for letter B, because it's the top of the scale, it is just a dollar amount or a cent amount. It's a dollar amount as opposed to any step, because if you're at the top of the scale, there's no additional steps to go above. As for any type of information here, it is within your packet. If the committee would like, I know that the sheriff or chief deputy would be more than willing to provide commentary as to the justification for the request. And I think that's always better for them to do it than for me to do it, because as their supervisors, they're going to better be able to make that case than I am. So if it would please the committee, I'd have either the sheriff or chief deputy come up and speak to this request.
All right, I'll speak in the mic here. So yeah, what we're again looking for, as Administrator Feld has stated, is basically rewarding this employee for the performance. It's a performance reward, not necessarily changing their overall category of employment, but just looking at moving them up from years of service. Basically relating or reflecting the quality of their work, the fact that they are performing well beyond what they're currently slated as. So again, this employee is in that level 1, and this employee is performing well and above a level 1 employee. The performance of her work, her ability to do the work, the timeliness, accuracy, everything is just moving her up to what would be more accurately reflected in an employee that was at level 3 versus that level 1 employee. So rewarding her for basically excelling beyond what would be required of her at that level 1, saying she's really performing at a level 3. So it's just moving her up for that reason. So it's basically based purely on performance and what she's been able to do for our department to gain efficiencies just since her short time there. So that's the nuts and bolts of our request there.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on any of these?
Oh,
or
and
both
I'll
of these?
throw one more item in there, sorry, Mr. Chair, is
No problem.
your first page that has kind of the financial impact. When you're looking, so that will give the financial impact of each of those positions except for the information services one. That was an error on my part. But so the financial impact then for the sheriff's request would be a total of $678. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the request, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Romden. Is there a
I'll second that.
Second by Haskey. Discussion. My only comment on all of these, not speaking to any in particular, I'm always hesitant at a time when unemployment is a little high around the country, and I always worry about the public optics of that. I don't question that any of these employees, I take at face value what the department heads are stating. I just always worry. We have a lot of people, I think, in the county, in the country, that would be very thankful to be drawing a paycheck. Nonetheless, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Pay scale modification, tourism coordinator.
Yes, I had put together a memo regarding the PIO tourism coordinator. I continue to be impressed by the amount of, what do I want to say, notoriety that our county continues to have. For those of you that weren't aware, and I forget what TV channel Chris Schuler is on. Okay? So that was Channel 5 just today. We continue to be on the news on a regular basis within the Green Bay market, and I know that from when I first came here to now, is that for some reason reporters and TV stations felt that the long drive to Kewaunee was not worth their time and effort, and now it is a regular occurrence that reporters will come to Algoma and to Kewaunee and to Luxembourg to cover news that is happening in little old Kewaunee County. I don't see that for Dorr. I don't see that for Oconto. And so I attribute that to Jennifer and her ability to therefore have Kewaunee be a known commodity within the Green Bay metro area and this region. And the financial impact would be $750.
750. Is there a motion?
Just a question.
Sure.
When you're talking about the financial impacts, is that the impact that it will affect the 2021 budget?
Yes, Mr. Romden.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for the pay scale modification for the tourism coordinator.
Motion by Augustine. Is there a second? Second by Haskey. Discussion?
I know she helps the parks out quite a bit. Winter Park, you get a lot of press on that one.
That's a good thing. Again, I go back to my earlier comments, not that I'm necessarily opposed to any of these. But any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Pay scale modifications, step 11 to 12, Highway Patrol Superintendent.
Todd, I'll let you go first.
Good evening. I hope you all had a chance to read the memo I put together in regards to the request in order to have Jesse get an additional step in 2021. I just, everything that the sheriff said about the assistant that they have there, it's ditto for me. He's made my job a lot easier. I think he's improved the department functions. He seems to have a lot of respect around the the department, the municipalities, and everybody that he works with. I guess other than the additional stuff that I have in here, I do want to point out the last paragraph, which is he's been willing to get into a piece of equipment due to being short-staffed at any particular time. That's not something that I expect, nor do I want, but it's something we have to do sometimes to get the job done, whether it's snow plowing or to be efficient in an operation. So I fully support this. And the only thing I didn't put in here was this is not an impact to the tax levy for next year in a technical sense in the budgeting process. And number two, 40% of Jesse's wages are paid through the state maintenance agreement contract. So, thank you.
There is no budget impact?
Well, there's direct and there's indirect. From a budgetary standpoint, it's an impact of $800. But again, because a certain amount of Mr. Schley's salary is paid through state aid, as well as if you're wanting to look from a time allocation standpoint, you're also looking at a certain amount of municipal and state revenue that would go towards the administrative part of the highway department. So while there would be a certain amount of county impact, the total impact is $800, but the total impact on the levy is much less than $800.
Okay. Supervisor Romden.
Move to approve the request.
Motion by Supervisor Romden. Is there a second? Yankee second. Discussion.
I'd like to just make a comment. I'm not against giving Jesse Schley the raise. I just wish that would have came to the committee level before it came here. Not that it would have made a difference, but I really think that's the proper way of doing it. That's my feeling.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reclassification, help desk specialist to GIS specialist, not GI, IT department.
Yes.
Completely different department if we're in the GI department.
This will need a slightly better explanation. Unfortunately, I had provided information that was incorrect, and so therefore there might be some confusion. As you see, within a reclassification, certain information is requested. One is what the new job description will be, and those duties have therefore been added. But you also found a couple different sheets that talked about a pay range as well as some calculations. And what was put first in front of you is that the pay would be $22.68, and that is incorrect. And that was my fault. After discussing with Mr. Loining and the like, the request is not $22.68 but $25.23. The $22.68 was taking the average of help desk support folks throughout the area and finding what the average would be for a step 3 person of a help desk support person, and that would be $22.68. If we include the GIS portion within that, that actually has more skill that needs to be taken care of, and how that will be described. And once I'm done here, I'll have Mr. Loining add on to my commentary. The GIS specialist is going to be taking over a partial responsibilities of the land information officer. The land information officer will be retiring within the next year or two. And so therefore, as part of the transition, The Geographic Information System, or GIS, portion of that job, some of that will be going to Mr. Donlin. And the reason we do that in-house is we could either have that done in-house or we could contract out with someone to do that. I prefer to having that in-house than to contract, because you never know how those contracts and those prices may change from year to year. And so therefore, to be commensurate with the increased responsibility and skill, the request is for $25.23.
And what is the current then? That would be,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair?
what is the current? We'd be going to 2523?
You would be going from what would have been $20.10, or $20.43. I apologize.
And so what is the total budget impact?
So
12,429.
12,449?
And if I could add to that, there is a $30,000 base, it's called a base budget grant that Steve receives that offsets his salary every year. So the $12,000 would be basically being paid out of that $30,000 base budget grant. So there's really no necessarily fiscal impact to the levy. And then the other portion of that money that comes in, it will be used to or be paid to Ruckert and Milky to do some of the GIS work that's more complicated at this point. As Kevin learns throughout the years and also being taught by Steve, we'll be able to pull some of that money back from the current consultant that does that work, and that more of that work will be done in-house, which will also save money in the long term.
What happens to the $30,000 if it isn't used for that, the $12,000? The $30,000 grant is.
we can use the base budgeting for a number of different things. We could take part of that and use that towards another staff person's salary, as well as for the varying contracts that we have with Ruckert and Milky and a few other folks that are doing some of our software and the like.
So at this point, are we only using 18,000 odd some dollars from that grant money?
No.
If there's no fiscal impact to the budget?
I'll explain it this way. So the Land Information Office gets $30,000 from the state. That's their base budget grant. And that $30,000 goes towards some of the salary of the Land Information Officer, some to Ruckert and Milky, some to Esri, some to, I forget who the other contractor is. So all of that money is being used. Some of that is being used to supplement our current staff's salaries, which therefore reduces the tax levy impact because of that. And we also use some of that for our contracts with some of our providers. So therefore, we don't have to use tax levy for those either.
So we get the $30,000 either way.
Correct.
That answer your
Yes,
question?
yes.
Just that now you would be
I
taking
apologize.
12,000 would be.
I thought we were only using 18,000 of it this year.
We use all of it.
We
We always use all
you'll
of it.
just allocate it to different spots.
We would just reallocate it.
We will use all of it no matter what. Do we have a retirement date for Steve yet?
Depending, it would either be near the fourth quarter of 2021 or the first quarter of 2022.
That could be quite a ways off.
Correct.
We don't have an exact.
Correct. And the reason why we don't have an exact is because we're trying to do an assessment as to the GIS functions and the transition and those types of things. So Mr. Hansen has been willing to be a little bit flexible of the retirement to make sure that everything is in order before he leaves.
So is somebody in there now training?
Yes, Steve is training Kevin as we speak, as well as Kevin is attending some training as well. So he is being trained currently.
Kevin has taken the basic GIS course already, so he's starting to do some of the splits that Steve does presently. Steve is overseeing some of that work to make sure that it's done correctly. And then there's, as he goes, he will be, just like any type of position, there's a transitional period where the person who is leaving trains the person who is going to replace him.
So this is not a step. This is a reclassification. This is how we're getting to the numbers.
Correct. If you look at Mr. Loining's memo, what you'll see is, first of all, is the explanation. And then if you go to the bottom of the second page where it talks about the pay scale, currently Mr. Donlin from the help desk specialist would be going from step 2 to step 3. And with the new pay scale that is being proposed, the request is to have him go to step 3.
And how does this compare with the current salary that we pay with Steve?
The land information officer has a higher salary, and again, the reason why is there are additional duties that Mr. Donlin would not be performing. Mr. Donlin would not become the land information officer. He would instead only be doing the GIS portion, or the majority of the GIS portion of the land information responsibilities.
Did you have a question, Supervisor Romden?
Well, just you said that he would not be the land information officer. When Steve leaves, who would be the land information officer?
We don't necessarily, I am looking at that. I'm not sure that we necessarily need a land information officer, in that as we started to do this transition, Tammy Malik, who at the start was an administrative assistant, was then transitioned into the real property lister, which is a portion of what Steve has done. In that same respect, from the GIS standpoint, Kevin Donlin would be doing some of the GIS portion that Steve had been doing, and then the other portions would more than likely be contracted out to a firm like Rukert and Milky.
Thank you.
I think it is prudent obviously on the part of the county, based on those who were here for the meeting previous to this one. We are going to be, I expect, or very possibly going to be looking at adding positions if we get a jail project accomplished. There's going to be additional staffing positions. That is inevitable. So I think that if we have opportunity to make adjustments in various places beforehand, that would certainly be in the county's interest, rather than getting in a situation where we're just adding staff. So I think that's a good idea for the county to look at that. What would happen if we were to leave the current classification and look at a step increase?
The committee can do as it sees fit, but from an HR perspective, I would advise against specifically just doing a step increase. The reason why is because when we look at a pay scale and a job description, we look at the duties and the skills that are part of that position. What we are asking Mr. Donlin to do is beyond what would be a help desk specialist, and therefore it has greater skill and greater knowledge to do that. Therefore, it is prudent for a new classification and wage scale to be done, no different than what we did with Ms. Malik. She was an administrative assistant. She started doing duties that are real property lister duties, which are beyond what would be an administrative assistant duties. So we created the new classification of real property lister. So in that respect, it would be my recommendation that the help desk / GIS specialist be the new classification.
I would like to table this until Steve Hansen retires, then we know exactly where we're going.
I'm a little confused because you're saying he's being trained by Steve, who Steve is leaving,
Correct.
But is he doing Steve's job or he's doing more than Steve's job or
Less.
He is
less?
doing less than Steve's job. He is doing a portion of Steve's job, or he's being trained to do a portion of Steve's job.
But then why is he getting paid more?
He's not.
I'm lost.
Okay, and I'll do it this way. The reason why you would be paying them more is because they are now doing a duty that is beyond what their current job description is. And so therefore, it is standard that if you're doing duties that are beyond what your normal classification are, that a new classification and wage scale is therefore presented. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I think I understand what may be the question, and if not, then I will stop. I think part of the question is, why are we paying Kevin more money if he's not doing the job? Is that kind of what the question is?
No, I'm not saying he's not doing
Okay.
a job, but I'm just questioning if he's taking over Mr. Hansen's job and Mr. Hansen was getting paid this. Why all of a sudden did Mr. Hansen's job, that description, go up in price?
You want
I
to do it?
I can
Go ahead.
answer. I mean, presently, right now, Steve makes over $71,000 a year for LIO/GIS coordinator. So Kevin would not be making $71,000 a year. He'd be making less than that. But we're creating two separate positions. We're creating a GIS coordinator, and we're basically what we're doing is we're creating a hybrid position. We're creating a GIS coordinator and help desk specialist. Those are two separate functions. And we're saying that the GIS coordinator position added to the help desk position is basically a $10,000 increase in pay for that specific skill set.
12,449, right?
Correct.
What step would that GIS specialist be at that $25 salary? Would he ready be at step 2 or step 3?
Go ahead.
Step 3.
What would it be? What would it be, Mr. Kunish, if it were at step 1?
Step 1 is at $24.50, Paul.
What does that put you at, sir? Usually you can spit these numbers out before I finish my question.
$24.50 from 2043.
No,
But what's the budget?
the total
for that
difference,
then? Yes. Total.
10,660.
Still over the 10 even.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we say yes to this, then we're paying Kevin and we're also paying Mr. Hansen,
Correct.
but they're going to be kind of helping each other. So I kind of see where Mr. Poppy's coming from to kind of table this, and just because you're,
Yes, so the county would be incurring both costs
Yes.
until Mr. Hansen's
but it could be
retirement
till
date.
2022, correct?
Could be pretty close.
It could be. My understanding is if it is early 2022, more like January, but it could be anywhere between
year and a
September and
half.
January.
It's still 2022,
Well,
yes.
the new salary would not start until 2021. All of these, in
Well,
fact, just to be
so-
clear, all of these do not start until January of
Right,
2021.
Right, okay.
If I may add to Steve has been pretty adamant about the amount of time that it's going to take to bring Kevin up to speed. We can't start this a month before Kevin leaves because it won't happen then. We have to start earlier than that. He even suggested a 2-year period, which I find a little long, but 6 months to 9-month period transition into that position, because you're taking a help desk specialist that has no training in GIS or very little and teaching them how to do all of those functions in a short period of time. I mean, when Steve started, 15, 16 years ago as the GIS coordinator. It took him a while to come up to speed. He had to go through quite a bit of training. We have the benefit of Steve being on staff now to train Kevin ahead of time, which is definitely a value to us.
Supervisor Poppy?
So if he's in training right now, how many hours a day does he train with them?
Right now, basically, he's given every week he's given a task to do within GIS, and then it's monitored by Steve. Once the Steve has a particular issue with COVID, so doing a close contact one-on-one isn't capable right now, but we anticipate within a month or two that there'll be more one-on-one training with Kevin, and he'll probably do, I'm guessing, probably 3 to 4 hours a week, up to the point where Steve retires.
Do you feel that Steve is going to, in a month or two, going to be willing to do more one-on-one type training?
According to Steve, he said that he would feel more comfortable. He believes that the situation will change, and we're presently working on ways to do more one-on-one with Steve and be separated. The difficult that we deal with is that Kevin can't do things over the phone. He has he has a hearing disability that doesn't allow him. He reads lips, so he can't read Steve. It's like talking gibberish to him. If you're wearing a mask, he can't understand you. He's got to have the mask off, which is more difficult that way. But we're working on ways to do a communication with him where he could do one-on-one and have more training in a period of time.
I guess my thoughts are if we're putting him through training, or he is in training right now, why would we start him at a step 3 pay scale if we're going to move him over to GIS specialist?
Well, the idea is that as Steve gets these splits that come in that are GIS work, Steve is going to have Kevin do them right along with Steve, so he's actually will be doing the work.
Where, Mr. Feld, where did these figures come from for GIS? This is something that was made up, right? It was based upon looking at what other places are pay for GIS. Is that
Correct. What Mr. Loining had surveyed the various counties and had then put together what the salaries were for those GIS coordinators within those counties, and therefore then the pay scale was brought forward from an annual standpoint, which was here, and then put to an hourly standpoint in his memo.
So would it be safe to say that this is something that we've come up with that's never been used before?
That would be true of any wage classification when we put together a new classification. Yes.
Well, I mean, it's not true of other positions. I mean, it's not true, for example, of the other positions where we, gave modifications. Or I mean, this is a reclassification.
Correct.
But we would also be reclassifying typically if we were reclassifying a worker to an already existing position.
Well, yes. If it's I apologize, Mr. Chair. If it's an already existing position, then no, then the wage scale already exists. The real property lister would be a good example of where one was created.
This is completely new, something that's made up, no figure, no baseline, no previous baseline.
And if I may add, I mean, I went and found information on 18 different counties in Wisconsin. The average for a GIS coordinator / hybrid position, meaning something else that this person is doing, and some that basically are just GIS coordinators, the average is $27.92. So we're actually below average, and that's starting. $27.92 is the starting pay scale on step 1. We're actually below that even on step 3. Taking in consideration that he's not doing all of GIS work, he's also doing help desk specialist. But we also found out that the help desk specialist position currently, right now, our starting pay is $19.52, and the average is $22.68 for the help desk specialist. So he's actually behind in the help desk specialist. So really, this does multiple functions. It helps, or it corrects the issue with his help desk position by adding also the GIS coordinator position to his position. And also, I'll add this as well. For some of you that are new and some of them aren't, when we first created the help desk position, I mentioned that we would start at help desk, but there would be a natural progression for this individual to move up as he learns more. Network specialist, then a network specialist, then possibly a director's position. By doing the GIS now with this current scale, it also fixes the natural progression that he would be doing as a network specialist, which is in lines with the current GIS specialist pay scale. So when he starts learning all of these type of different skills, as far as all the things that I do throughout his progression in his career, we won't be asking for more money at that point to, you know, he's a network specialist, he needs to get paid like a network specialist. No, we're taking care of, the GIS portion is actually taking care of that.
Supervisor Romden, did you have your hand up, sir? Or are we just stretching?
No. The current help desk specialist is on the pay scale right now, aren't they?
Correct.
Yes.
Is there anything built into that where, as you said, they take on additional things as the job progresses? Is that built into the pay scale, or?
It is not.
Okay, and he's technically in training now as a GIS person, so why would we want to pay him the full GIS salary now? Is there some hybrid we can do, like because he's training and he's taking on extra duties, can we, instead of going $4 an hour, can we go $2 an hour until he takes over the position and then make an adjustment at that time?
This committee could do whatever it wants.
As a compromise, maybe Supervisor Romden, is I think of a new position. Let's go with the economic support specialist, where she just came into her position. Has never been an economic support specialist before. She starts at step 1. So maybe therefore this is a new position instead of step 3, maybe the position starts at step 1.
Which is 10,500, right?
10,660, I think, is what Mr. Kunish said.
10,660.
I thought I heard Mr. Poppy mention he had a motion to table this earlier.
He didn't make it a motion. If he wants to, he could. I'm not getting a lot of.
Just beating a dead horse here, I think.
I'm not getting a lot of clarity from this committee, and
I mean, he's in training now, so he's really not the GIS coordinator.
Mr. Poppy, were you going to make that motion or not?
I'll make the motion that we table it until Steve Hansen's ready to retire.
I'll second it.
Second, now, so the motion is that we're not going to take it up again until he's ready to retire. There's not a specified date on that, and what happens in the meantime with the training if this motion is passed?
I guess then if we wanted to make an adjustment to his current wage, we could, I guess, right?
While he's training?
While he's training.
I would have proposed something more along the lines of half of this for the time being. Would have been my suggestion, just kind of, and then when the retirement takes place, you can assess that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Well, there's a motion and a second on the floor right now, so.
So you could defeat this motion and then you could take up. So there's discussion on this motion to table.
Is a motion to table debatable? I don't think so.
It is, because there's no date certain, correct, Council?
That's correct. There's motion to basically postpone that. Well, it's not. Yeah, it is. Yes.
So is there further debate on this? Go ahead, Mr. Loining.
Well, I would make a suggestion then that we, for the lease for this training period, that we correct the help desk specialist position and move him to 2268, which would be what the average help desk specialist would start at step 1. He's already on step 3, but we could,
What would be the total on that, Mr. Kunish? I would have thought after I did this to you 4 times tonight already, you'd have been anticipating that. Sorry.
6,251.
So here's what, this committee is going to do what it wants to do, and they're going to do it shortly. You could defeat this motion to table, and then you could come back and have a motion to go with the 6,251. So we're going to vote on the motion. No, we're not, Mr. Supervisor.
When we vote, I request a roll call vote.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a vote on the motion to table at this time. Roll call vote. Supervisor Kroll?
I had second. So you're saying to table it?
Table. If you vote, do you want to table or do you want to defeat this motion and then go to a different motion? So if you vote yes to table, then it's pushed off and nothing happens tonight.
No, then I won't table it.
Okay, no. Supervisor Augustine?
No.
Supervisor Romden?
No.
Supervisor Mastelier?
No.
And you've been unusually quiet during this discussion, I would add. Supervisor Yonke?
No.
Supervisor Haskey?
No.
Supervisor Poppy?
No.
Votes against his own motion. No for Olson. That motion fails. Now we could have a motion that would go with the if the committee desired, if somebody would desire to make the motion that for the time being, you go with that 6,251 figure, whatever that hourly wage was, Paul.
22.68 an hour.
I'll make that
Motion by Poppy for
motion. I'll
that,
make that motion.
Second.
and second by Romden. Is there discussion on that motion?
Just a clarity question. Is that going then you're saying from step 1 where it is currently to step 3? Is that what we're doing?
No. No. You would simply be making this, you would be paying this figure, or well, Paul, explain this, how this comes out.
I'm just making it work by plugging a number in. He's not on the pay scale anywhere, so he's going to go from step 2, I believe, where he is at now, and we're going to give him 22.68 an hour in here, and then presumably at some future time when this happens,
This would be revisited,
Part B happens, and then the new scale would take
which
effect.
the likelihood is that it would be revisited in 2022.
So are we adjusting the help desk specialist scale? Is that what we're doing?
No. No.
Scale are
It's
we
in-
adjusting then?
We are adjusting the scale. We're changing him from step 3, which is what he would be getting next year, to just plugging in 22.68, which is not part of a scale anywhere, in recognition of his additional duties.
Poppy's motion in the fine print was Paul makes it work.
I'm still confused. If you say he's not on, the helpline specialist is not on the pay scale,
currently he is on that pay scale.
then what step are you referring to if he's not on a scale?
They split the difference between existing and proposed new one, halfway between there.
Is that correct, Mr. Loining, that you were the one that came up with this exact figure?
Yeah. When I did my research from the 18 different counties,
No, the 6,251. That,
I misspoke. That was Ross's per hourly rate for other counties, to make them equivalent with other counties, but it's not on our scale anywhere.
okay, so the,
Is that help desk specialist, or is that moving him to GI specialist step 1?
May I, Mr.
no,
Chair?
it would not be moving him to step 1 GIS specialist because that would be 10,600. Help us out, Mr. Felt.
I'm thinking what the committee is wanting to happen, and I understand where Supervisor Romden is coming, is the 2268 would be, if this is what the committee so wants, is the 2268 would be Mr. Donlan's salary for 2021. From a simplicity standpoint, that was put into a scale that you see in your packet. And if the committee so chose, they could make that be the new wage scale for the help desk specialist.
Does that make sense, Mr. Romden?
On the current.
Like you said, this committee can do whatever they want, so.
Correct.
And I would encourage you not to do that as much as you
Me
can.
too.
I would note that the help desk supports technician, step number 10 is 2210, step number 11 is 2232, step 12 is 2254, step 13 is 2277. Those all seem like viable options.
So what you're suggesting, Mr. Wisnicki, now that we're 5 motions down the line, is that we would go to that step that on the help desk specialist that would be closest to this number, so that we could then simply say we're sticking with the help desk specialist here for the time being, but adding additional duties to it so it justifies that step.
That would be a reasonable way to handle this, I think.
So can we get that, can we get that figure adjusted then if it's amenable to Poppy? Where would we, Paul, do you have that in front of you, and where would we adjust that number to? That would make it a little bit cleaner.
Step 12 is 2254, step 13 is 2277, pick one.
So these are on the scale for the helpline specialist or help desk specialist? I thought there was no scale for that.
Just a little clarification. So the 2268 is what I found as the beginning step average. Okay. Currently, Kevin is on the help desk specialist, has a scale, a pay scale. It's below. It's quite a bit below average. So if that clarifies anything, so there is a scale presently for the help desk specialist.
Yankee.
I've got a question. You surveyed those counties. Are they comparable counties in size?
If you want to answer that.
The counties that I gave Mr. Loining are similar to ones that I had did when I first put together the pay plan, of which you have a number of counties within the area, our neighbors, our area, as well as what I would call peer counties, which are roughly the same size as Kewaunee County, that are adjacent to more populous counties. And so that came out to about roughly 18 counties.
So it seems to me that the desire of the committee, according to this motion, was to get as close to that 2268 figure, 6,251, as possible. Staying within these steps makes it cleaner. So what step would that give us, Mr. Kunish? Do you
Step
have
13, $22.77 an hour.
Okay, so an extra 9 cents, and right, and then what does that give you for a total?
$6,469.
Would you be willing to amend your motion to reflect that, Mr. Poppy?
Yes.
Ramden had
Yeah.
seconded that? Would you be willing to second that?
Sure, I'd be willing to second the amended motion, yes.
Wonderful. Any further discussion on that? Yankee?
So for clarification, are we keeping the help desk support technician or starting a new one, help desk / GIS coordinator?
Would be
We're keeping the current wage scale and the current title of the position.
Right. We're adding those duties, justifying the steps because we're giving additional duties for the time being, and then it will be revisited upon Mr. Hansen's retirement, which, is likely going to be a little bit, but whenever it is, that can be done. Any other discussion? All right, we're ready to go to a vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Moving on to Program Assistant UW Extension, retention of position.
We have letter E, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, contract employee to county employee, case manager, CLTS.
Thank you, Mr.
We're on that so long, I thought we must be a couple of letters ahead.
No worries, Mr. Chair. In the Human Services Department, we have a number of folks that are county staff, as well as we have a number of folks that are contracted staff. From a management standpoint, there really isn't a difference. We direct them. We assign them clients. We tell them when to come to work, when to leave. So in almost all intents and purposes, they are county employees. Part of the issue with having contracted employees is there at times can be an issue regarding retention. Because they are contracted employees, they do not receive the retirement and the health benefits that a county employee would. Therefore, at times we have seen some turnover from case managers that have left county employment to seek other opportunities. One of the best ways to ensure that our folks stay with the county, who have spent the time to create those relationships with our clients and built those relationships, is to basically make good and call them what they really are, which is county employees. And so therefore, this is something that I would like to do over a series of time, in that we have roughly about five different contracted employees in the different units. And so I wanted to start first with the CLTS unit and making the person that is there that's a contracted employee and make them a county employee. As for the staffing levels, yes, that does increase the number of county employees that we have, but it does not, I repeat, it does not increase the number of bodies that we have working for us. And Melissa Anoy is the unit manager for CLTS. If you want to add any other commentary, please feel free.
Thank you. Kewaunee County Human Services has several contracted employees hired through Helping Hands caregivers. The employees have the same responsibilities as those employed by Kewaunee County. Furthermore, they follow the same personnel handbook and receive the same wage compensation and earn the same vacation and sick time. Contracted employees do not receive the same insurance or retirement benefits, which is a cost savings to the county. Few things that I wanted to just touch on. So training, of course, upon hire, an extensive amount of time is spent training new staff members with little reimbursement from Medicaid. When retention is low, this becomes a significant cost to the county. Kewaunee County Human Services dedicates time and resources to recruit, onboard, and train new employees. The agency as a whole is negatively impacted when the role is unfilled. The vacancy causes deeper impacts to the remaining employees. There's a significant strain on the other staff members when there's an employee shortage. Historically, the rehire process has taken months. Consumers need to continue to be served during the shortage. The other employees are forced to take on additional duties, and they are spread across multiple roles during these periods of time. The change results in lost productivity and an increased risk of burnout. Another topic is relationships. Relationship building is a significant part of being successful with the consumers we serve. It's difficult for families to build a rapport with the case manager only to lose them a short time later. It's not trauma-informed for families to have to share their stories over and over again as a result of staff turnover. It's difficult for families to get connected to interim case managers during the hiring process, and just when they start to feel comfortable, the new hire is onboarded and the process starts over for them. A couple other points. Contracted staff feel less valued than county staff because of the lack of benefits received. Having county and contracted staff together raises morale concerns within the agency. The relationship supervisors have with the contracted employees is complicated. They're housed within the agency, they utilize county equipment, they have access to county supplies and software, and they even have a county email address. They receive annual evaluations from county management, but when performance concerns need to be addressed, there's a question regarding who should provide the feedback, since they're not technically county personnel. Human Services experiences great turnover with contract employees because once the training and experience is gained through our employment, the employees are able to find alternate employment with more appealing insurance and retirement benefits. Since 2015, 14 employees were hired by Helping Hands as contractors for our agency. 5 of the 14 remain with us. In summary, high turnover is financially costly to the department, but it's evident that the turnover has much deeper impacts than seen on the surface. In order to retain our highly qualified and dedicated staff, It's imperative that we work towards making our contracted staff county employees. It's my request that we start by making the CLTS, Children's Long-Term Support Waiver, contracted position a county position. The position is supported within our CLTS budget in Human Services.
What is the additional cost per year?
That's $17,333.
That's insurance, everything? That's all
Correct.
additional?
Part of the reason why is, and Paul, I'll let you touch base. So the benefits and the health benefits and retirement is roughly about $34,654, but there's other savings in the respect that the hourly wage plus premium is a different salary scale than what we pay from a contracted standpoint. So there is savings as well, and the total cost therefore is $17,333.
That, to correct, that's for all 5 employees, right?
No,
Or
that
just
is
one?
That is for one, because what you're doing is you're going from a contracted employee that does not receive
Correct.
county health benefits and retirement, and you're now making them a county employee. If we were to say just what is that dollar amount, the benefits and retirement is roughly about $34,654, but because of the additional premium that we pay for a contracted employee, the total fiscal impact is $17,333.
But in the beginning, you said there was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, you said there was 5 employees you want to do this with. Are those over the next number of years?
Yes, not
Okay.
this year.
Not this coming year in 2021.
Yes, because again, that would be too much of a shock to the budget. I try to think of, they have been for years, in all intents and purposes, county employees. We should live up to our commitment and make them county employees.
So to move all 5 of them eventually would be $86,665 per year.
Depending on how that would go, yes.
Question for you. If they could actually push us to make them a county employee, because basically we tell them when to come work, what to do, when to leave. They use our employee handbook. They're treated as a county employee in all respects, except that they don't get our benefits. I mean, they could, I don't know how.
How many years have we been doing this for?
Too long.
It's technically they're a county employee, and all we're
think
doing
it
is
would be
taking advantage of not paying them the benefits.
I think you would be creating a greater risk by doing one of them and leaving the other 4, because then you're saying there's a difference and the other 4 could make that accusation.
I'm thinking, my whole thought was to try to stagger this over time.
Supervisor Romden?
Are we still on a hiring freeze?
Yes,
So this would be creating a new county position.
correct.
Thing is that, like I say, they could push us, and we're gonna either we're gonna cut them or we're gonna add them, and there's
We've been doing this for how many years?
Yeah.
I mean,
Hiring freeze or not, I mean, we've been pushing this thing down the road, and I think we're gonna be forced. We have to start adding them.
so these people are hard to enter into contracts with, these specific people? Is that the issue?
The issue comes down
They're
to
not available, or?
Sorry. The difficulty becomes, Supervisor Rompton, is that there are times that we have these folks contracted, and we may have them for a year or 2, but then they'll move on, because when they look at what they're currently making with Helping Hands or some provider, they can go someplace else, which is much more lucrative, and therefore we've now had 2 years of relationships and training that now we have to start over with. And for those 2 years, they have essentially been county employees.
So if these contract people leave, don't you just contract with another person to do the job, or?
Yes, we do.
I think,
So if they're available, I don't understand why we need to start creating more full-time county positions.
Again, my whole feeling is that these are county positions, just not in name.
If I may just reiterate, it's the cost of adding new positions, retraining them. It's a substantial amount of training that goes into the onboarding process. And then it's imperative to consider the relationship building with the most vulnerable consumers that are served within the county.
If I may comment, there are, as indicated, a number of people in that department that perform these roles. And to my view, and some of the concerns that John raised, I do have concerns about those, although we do have a clear separation in that we're working with an outside entity, that being Helping Hands, that provides us a great deal of information for some of the concerns you have. But nonetheless, the points you raised are valid. These are effectively county employees, but they're working for this quote Helping Hands.
so there is a separation, but if you take one of them and make this distinction, then you create a greater potential for problem, correct?
Well, yes and no. Again,
Well, the other four then could make the argument
well, if I'll get to my greater point. I've advocated to Scott and others for years that we should not have these quote second-class employees in our department. There's a time and a place for contracted employees. If they show up to work every day for 40 hours a week, working a full-time job for the county, they should be county employees. If you hire a specialist or professional, yeah, you can contract with the specialist or professional because they do it like a doctor, for instance, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But if you have someone who's effectively a county employee doing county work at a county desk, on a county phone, on a county computer, with a county email, using the county's personnel book, they should be county employees. There's a, if they're performing a specialty job for maybe part-time specialty job, i.e., let's say you hire someone to do foot care or something, or groom patients, or go into the homes and provide some personal cares. Those could be specialty contract workers, but these workers are effectively county employees. And I think Scott's plan to sorely move them into the fold, legally, I would support that move, as
Right.
long overdue.
but yet legally, we are not required to do so.
No, you're not.
So, and you're looking at $87,000 a year. What's the committee's pleasure? Yes.
I think in a prior year, we did take a contract person, and this isn't the first time we're doing this, is it not?
We did that with the administrative assistant position in last year's budget.
Right, so this isn't a new thing, we've done it before.
Supervisor Yonke.
Are all these people, these 5 full-time employees, 40 hours a week?
Yes,
And are there a bunch of others that are just part-time?
there's 2 that are part-time, that are contract. Lynn and Laura, correct?
Lynn is full-time, Lori
Okay.
is part-time.
Okay, then only 1, I'm sorry, is part-time.
Okay, I'm just thinking of someone that comes in our house and is paid by the caregivers. And that would be someone that's employed through
That's
Helping
different.
Hands, I mean?
Yep, that's different. What we're referring, employed by the same agency, but we are speaking of the professional staff, the social workers, who are going into the home and coordinating services, generally like once a month. What I think you're referring to is probably like a supportive home care provider or a respite provider. That is different than what we're referring to.
Okay, like weekends and stuff.
Right.
Okay, that helps.
Is there a motion or not? Supervisor Haskell.
Motion to have the contract employee become a county employee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Just a question, if this happens, does this individual start at step 1 in the human services pay scale, or where do they go?
They would start, since they follow our pay scale, they would stay in the same spot on our pay scale. So I forget where she would be. I think she's in step either 2 or 3.
I'm not positive. I believe she's going into step 2.
Okay.
Any other questions? Going to take a roll call vote. Supervisor Romden,
Yes.
Supervisor Augustine,
Yes.
Supervisor Kroll,
No.
Supervisor Haskey,
Yes.
Supervisor Poppy,
Yes.
Supervisor Yonke,
Yes.
Supervisor Mastelier,
Yes.
Supervisor Olson, no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
We move on to Program Assistant, UW Extension.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this has been brought forth onto the agenda. You will be on tomorrow night receiving the administrator's proposed budget. Within that proposed budget, I will be recommending the elimination of the program assistant position in UW Extension. So I believe that it was requested by the chair that this item be placed on the agenda for discussion. The purpose for the recommendation for the elimination of the position is, again, very similar to what was my rationale last year. There are currently 3 extension educators that are in the UW Extension office as we speak. I also was looking at extension offices within the area. There are a number of extension offices in counties, both that are near us as well as that are our size, that have only one administrative assistant. Again, looking from a staffing standpoint, the one difference that we have now from this year as opposed to last year is that the staff person that currently fills that position is vacating that position. So the elimination of that position does not cause any staff person to have to find other work. That staff person has found other employment, and so therefore the elimination of this position would not cause any specific undue hardship for that staff member.
Supervisor Romden.
This issue was addressed by the UW Extension Committee, and I know we went through this whole thing last year about the position and the person involved. After talking with our educators, they have a strong opinion that they need more than one support person in that office, and we as a committee were going to request the administrator consider a half-time position for the UW Extension and not eliminate it totally. Those educators are basically out and about doing their job, and they rely on support staff. And I mean, if they have only one in another county, that's fine, but depending on the workload and what they do, our 3 ladies feel that they would like to have that extra half-time position. So if there's any consideration that could be given to that, it would be appreciated.
I can appreciate Supervisor Romden's advocating for the agents and the like. Again, I have to look at not just extension, but the larger standpoint. And again, I try to keep this into context. I look at the sheriff's department that has over a dozen officers, and that's just from the patrol side, and they have 2 administrative assistants. I look at the jail that has over a dozen folks, and those 2 administrative assistants that support the entire sheriff's office. I look at the human services department that has close to 30, and they have, I think, 2.5 administrative assistants. So while I understand the wanting of additional administrative support, at least for now, it is still my recommendation that the extension office only have 1 administrative assistant.
With what we just spent on converting a contract employee, we could have kept a half-time position, and with what we will now spend on the 5, we could have had a full-time position and then some. Just a thought. Any other Discussion?
Well, just for the sake of where it might go, I'd like to make a motion that a half-time position in the UW Extension Department be put in the 2021 budget.
I will second that motion.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Aye, no. All right, we're going to take a roll call vote on that. Yankee?
No.
Augustine?
Aye. Yes.
Kroll?
Yes.
Haskey? Romden?
Yes.
Mastelier?
No.
Poppy?
Yes.
Olson? No. What was the count?
Hold on.
Aye. 4-4.
Motion
Motion
fails.
fails.
Who did I miss? Oh, Poppy.
Moving on.
Thank you for listening.
Annual cost of living calculation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the last 2 pages within your packet. The committee is tasked with approving the annual cost of living adjustment that is put together as part of the pay scale. As a matter of procedure, we always take the December cost of living calculation from the Wisconsin Employment Relations Commission, the WERC. That is, those numbers are used throughout the state for a variety of negotiations and the like. So for December 1 of 2020, that number was 1.65%. So therefore, it is the recommendation of administration that the cost of living adjustment be set at 1.65%.
And this is for,
This is again for 2021.
Yeah, this is cost of living. That's not the steps or anything else that gets added on. The average, Mr. Kunish, you had that some time back, what it was, I want to say 3 point something that most employees will receive ultimately.
Yeah, I don't have that now, but steps are 1.5% and 1%, and this would be a 1.65 on top of that. So high twos of 3%.
So did you just say that the steps range from 1 to 1.5%?
The steps in the pay plan are 1.5% or 1%.
Okay.
Have a motion? Motion by Haskey, second?
I have a question. So this is saying that everyone's getting a raise at this.
That is correct. 1.65% plus their steps.
So and I'm not saying nobody deserves a raise, but I think we've been through quite a bit in our county, and there's a lot of businesses that are hurting. And I just think taking this from the taxpayer, I don't know, there's been a lot of money that was dished out tonight, and I think that there's a lot of struggling people in our economy.
You're suggesting that at some point somebody's got to stick up for the poor taxpayer?
I am. I think that's what we were voted on as people of our district to do. And I'm not saying that, but there's people out there that would give anything to just have a little bit of extra money. And, I run businesses, quite a few, and, there's times where our employees might need a raise, but they ain't going to get the whole thing because times are tough. So I'm just.
Yes, I guess are you going to second the motion we have on the floor, or do you have a comment?
Well, I didn't know there was a motion.
Well, there was a motion, but then we didn't have a second, so you go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Romden.
Well, this kind of dovetails on what you were just hinting at on our prior items prior to this, all these pay scale adjustments. But when we put the pay scale in place a number of years ago, there were certain percentages built into that pay scale. And all of a sudden, out of the blue comes not in addition to the adjustments within the pay scale, came an additional cost of living increase. Now, in all the places I worked for in my lifetime, you didn't get a percentage pay increase plus a cost of living. You got one or the other, not both. And I was opposed to this adjustment a number of years ago, and I'm still opposed to cost of living adjustments. If you got built-in raises in the pay scale, my opinion, it's one or the other, not both. That's all I have to say on the issue.
I have a motion. Is there a second, or is it going to die?
I'll second it.
Second by Masteler. Discussion.
So the motion that's being made is to
Approve 1.6.
approve one or the other, is that correct?
No. The motion is that you would approve the 1.65% cost of living calculation. This would be in addition to the step increases on the pay scale.
May I do just one
Yeah.
point of clarification?
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only point of clarification that I want to make to the committee is this. If the committee were to decide to not have any cost of living adjustment period, then those that are at the top of the scale would receive no increase. Just so everyone is clear, because in the pay scale, the first half of the pay scale is 1.5% plus the cost of living. The second half of the pay scale is 1% plus the cost of living. And the top of this pay scale is just the cost of living. The reason why this may be, this is different than what some folks do, is more often than not, what happens is you see, and I'll give an example, that we're going to give a 3% raise. And what that usually happens is most private businesses do not necessarily have pay scales that go up. That's usually in government or in a union standpoint. And usually if there's a 3% increase, that factors in the cost of living. And what we have done, which probably adds to more confusion to folks, is that we've separated out those two things. We've taken the cost of living as one portion, and then I'll call it, when we go from step 1 to 2 to 3, that's more of a longevity increase. And so that may add to some of that confusion.
So you have two choices here. We're going to take a vote on this motion shortly. You can either approve this motion. This motion approves the 1.65% cost of living plus the steps. If you if you decline this motion, you could then entertain another motion, whatever that might be, Ramden's motion or whatever. One other question, though, I do have under this, Sheriff's Department. That's union.
At least for the sheriff's deputies, that is a union contract. They are what I will call insulated from anything in that respect because it is a contract.
So we would be. So law enforcement would not be impacted by
The
this.
sheriff's deputies would not be.
The sheriff
That
might
as
not be
for
okay.
as for the radio operator jailers, they would be, and anyone that is salaried would be as well. Electeds are exempt, and those that are in a union contract are exempt.
Are there other questions? Yes, sir.
With this dual system in place, so every employee gets the step increase and they get the cost of living, regardless of if you're a terrible employee, you still get the same as the most wonderful employee.
We have no terrible employees in Kewaunee County.
I'll do it two ways. At the top of the scale, no one receives a step increase at the top of the scale. And if it's a terrible employee, then it's incumbent upon that department head to make sure that that employee is no longer employed with Kewaunee County.
But in simple terms, everybody gets the step, everybody gets the cost of living.
In simple terms, yes, if you're not at the top of the scale.
So if you're at the top of the scale,
you get cost of living.
Then you get cost of living, which in this case is more than the average step.
Correct.
Supervisor Kroll, you had a question, or did we answer it?
If everyone gets it. you just do your job, but there's people I'm sure that perform way beyond. And is that fair?
If the committee wants the county to research a pay-for-performance model, we can do that.
Oh, boy.
Yes, exactly. But if that's what the committee wants, we can do the research regarding that. And if that were the case, then the committee must be very involved in that research and putting together that model, because what happens then is when we talk about pay for performance, now what you've done is you've made pay and wages extremely subjective, as opposed to the pay plan, which makes it more objective. Does it not allow for fairness? If you want to say it in that way, yes.
Okay, do we have questions specific to this motion? Any other questions? If not, we're going to go to a roll call vote on this motion. If this motion passes, then it's the 1.65% plus the steps. If this motion fails, then we'll have to, you'll have to give me another motion. So roll call vote, Supervisor Romden.
No.
Supervisor Augustine.
Yes.
Supervisor Kroll.
No.
Supervisor Haskey.
Yes.
Supervisor Yonke.
No.
Supervisor Mastelier.
Yes.
Supervisor Poppy.
No.
I'm assuming you're a no, Mr. Chair?
What's that?
Nothing, I'm waiting.
No.
It fails 3-5.
Suppose I could have made it a tie and it would have failed either way and I would have looked a lot nicer.
Whatever the chair, however it pleases the chair.
Well, I don't want to tarnish my image as, the easygoing, free spending chair that I've got going on. So I'm going to need another motion then. I got all night, folks.
I'm glad you do.
What kind of a motion are you looking for, Mr. Chair?
Well, we're going to need a motion on I guess if we don't make a motion, then the annual cost of living calculation fails and we would simply go with the steps. Is that the desire of the committee? Yes, Supervisor
Well, I
Haskey.
think we have to look at our long-term employees, though, that don't have any kind of step. It's not really fair to those people to go year after year without a pay increase. Something has to be given to the people that are at that upper level.
I would agree with Ms. Haskey, because getting new employees, training new employees, all come at a cost, and retaining those employees, we have to do what we can to retain those employees, and especially the ones that are at the top. I feel we have to give them a certain percentage to retain them, because it in the long run, it costs a lot more to bring a new employee in and train them, and who knows if they're going to even stay then.
Is there a motion that we wish to consider? Otherwise, it's going to be left with the step increase, right?
With the current action of the committee, there is only the step increase for those that are on the step plan.
And what is the step increase?
Depending on where your step is, steps basically 1 through 8 are 1.5, and 9 through 15 are 1.0.
So do the ones that are not in the step increase at 1.0? Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
What is your motion?
To whoever is not in that step increase, to what was it again? 1.0, and what was the other one?
The front half is 1.5. The second half is 1.0.
So do or do 1.5. So then because they're your longtime employees, so do a 1.5 for whoever is not in that step increase.
So your motion is clarify?
to do a 1.5 for anyone that is not in that step increase? Because you're saying that step increase is for anyone that is not in it, so it's your longtime employees, correct?
Correct. Anyone that has, it's your long-term employees, yes.
So it's going to be 1.5, 1.5%.
I would second that.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir. Discussion. Supervisor Mastelier.
Okay. Listening to the motion, as I understand it, only the long-term employees would receive that? What about would the first half and the second half also receive it? Because according to the motion, it's only for the long-term employees.
If the motion were to pass, Supervisor Massler, those that are moving from step 1 to step 2 all the way to step 8 would receive a 1.5% step increase. For those that are going from step 8 to 9 up to step 15, they would receive a 1.0% increase. Anyone who is at the top of the scale would have a 1.0% increase of their current wage. Again, excluding any of the electeds and union contracts.
Okay, that's 1.5, correct?
I'm sorry, 1.5. I apologize, Supervisor Kroll. My bad.
Okay, I was lost. Okay.
Okay.
So your higher up people will get the 1.5, the ones that are off of that scale.
Anyone that is no longer on the
Yep.
scale would receive 1.5% increase of what their current salary is in 2020.
Right.
Aren't there some steps that stay stagnant for 2 years?
No longer. When we changed the step increases and reduced them, what we did is we got rid of any freeze years. So there was a 1.5% step increase or a 1% step increase until you reach the top of the scale.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have an issue with the group in the middle getting less than the people that are newbies and the people that have been here forever. You know, I think, you know, if you're going to do if the middle ground is at 1% now, I think the next level should not be at a higher level than that middle group. You know, I don't think we should go from 1.5 to one group and then 1 and then back to 1.5 and settle, you know, take that middle segment out of there. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say here?
Other discussion?
Technically, right now, based on the pay scale, if I come in here as a new county employee and I see at the top, here's my maximum earnings as a county employee under the step plan, I would know that coming in, right?
It would be a guide, Supervisor Romden, because again, under the current step plan, what we are assuming is that there's no cost of living that affects that. So when we talk about if I'm hired now, that what I would therefore receive 15 years from now is already decided upon in year 1. And we know that that's not the case for a number of different reasons. One is that under the current pay plan, there's a cost of living that affects that wage scale. And second, because of county boards and the executive committee, they can change those pay scales anytime within that 15
Correct.
years. So what I had said to employees when this first happened is that if you get hired today and you look at 15 years from now and you think that's what you're going to get paid, that's an unrealistic expectation, because more often than not, you're going to be paid more than that. Because if people want to do that, I'll lock you in for those 15 years, because honestly, the county's going to save a heck of a lot of money in that respect.
So it's a moving document. It can be changed at any time by any board.
Correct. And executive committee.
Any other? Very well.
Did Jenny make a motion?
Kim
Jim,
made the
there's
I
a
made a
motion and a
motion
second on the
because I'm
floor.
going off of your scale.
Who
So what
seconded that
your
motion?
scale was is.
I did.
Aaron.
And then I just said anybody that is off that scale or not on that scale is going to do 1.5. How the scale is set is how it's set. before that. I'm just saying for anyone not on the scale, we'll get 1.5.
Okay. Any other?
It was much easier dealing with unions.
Okay.
It's more expensive.
All right, roll call vote. Romden,
Yes.
Augustine,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Haskey,
Yes.
Poppy,
Yes.
Yonke,
Yes.
Mastalir,
No.
Olson, yes.
Passes 7-1.
All right. Motion to convene in closed session to review a draft administrator's contract.
You take a 5-minute break?
Oh, request for a 5-minute break first. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Didn't want a 5-minute break?
Well, I was just gonna have someone then make the, yeah, you